Hi, my name's Maggie, and this is my WalkAway story. I grew up in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, which is a liberal Democratic town. I did not ever question being a liberal Democrat because, number one, I was born into it and it was natural. Number two, I believed that to be conservative or Republican was to be greedy, narrow-minded, bigoted, and against the environment. I was firmly entrenched in my liberal mindset, and I saw myself as morally superior. I always identified with the underdog. I had a sixth sense for finding persecution. I learned from the liberal mindset to see people in authority as persecutors. Every CEO, every police officer was probably a despot. When I got a job at a liberal nonprofit in Tucson, Arizona, also a very liberal town, I started to question being a liberal. This was a direct result of working with liberals and seeing the liberal beliefs played out in real time. I worked in a department of people that saw themselves as the persecuted minority of the organization, also a liberal mindset, to feel like you're being persecuted. Maybe you are, but you're probably not. We often talked bad about everyone else in the organization because they didn't do as much important work as we did. We relentlessly made fun of the CEO because he was obviously evil and greedy. When I interacted with him one-on-one, he was actually very kind, and I really had no specific reason not to support him, but I also didn't want anyone to know this, so I kept quiet because I had to stay in the group. My department focused on teaching people how to grow their own food. I specifically worked on an organic farm, and we received a few really large grants while I worked there, which allowed us to spend a lot of money. I saw my coworkers spend a lot of money for our programs without much oversight at all. It seemed strange to me that we could just buy whatever we wanted because I tend to be very frugal, but I wanted to fit in, so again, didn't say much. But then we bought a top-of-the-line tractor and we never used it. That's when bells and whistles started going off in my head. The person who was supposed to use it never did. It almost seemed like he was scared because we were all very young and inexperienced, and here we have a really expensive tractor and we really don't know how to use it. Whatever the reason, the tractor just collected dust. This wasteful spending is indicative of liberalism. Liberals like to spend other people's money because they like high taxes, and when they do it wastefully. It's very easy to buy an expensive tractor because the government gave us a huge grant and we actually had to spend the money within a certain time frame or we would lose the money. So there was an incentive to waste money. A for-profit business has to be careful about its spending so that its spending doesn't exceed its profits. But when we have other people's money, we can spend it however we want. It's wasteful and it's liberal. Some other things that helped wake me up from this mentality was this mentality of hating the person in charge that we all had. This is liberal to the core. We disliked authority so much that we decided no one should be in charge. Now, there was a person who had the title farm manager, but everyone silently agreed that she should not have much power. She even agreed to this. But what ended up happening is that she and I did all the work. I was her assistant. So she and I did all the work, and everyone else just did their own thing. Sometimes these people didn't even come to work. Why would they when there was no consequence for their action? When things got hard, they just said they were busy with other projects. I got so fed up and I walked away from being a liberal and this crazy Lord of the Flies mindset. And again, another liberal, indicative of liberalism. It's Lord of the Flies. It's chaos. The things that they believe don't make sense when played out in the real world. It doesn't make sense to not respect the person in charge. Because then how are things going to run properly? Now, I would have just become an angry person, but while this was happening, I met someone who was reasonable and conservative. He angered me, but he made me think. Long story short, we got married, and when I got pregnant, I was able to leave that job, and I have never looked back. I loved the work I did, but the people I worked with were illogical, unreasonable, and liberal, except one person who I still keep in contact with. So those are the reasons that I left the liberal mindset. I'm not very political, so the Democratic part, it doesn't hold as much weight with me, but the liberal part, they were all crazy, illogical, agnostic. That's a whole nother story. But Brandon, I want to thank you for giving us the platform to speak these stories, and God bless you.